Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Connecting the Dots, Digital Authentication in Government, sponsored by NetIQ Attachmate and ProMark on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. Our guests today are Tim Ruland, the Chief Information Security Officer at the U.S. Census Bureau in the Department of Commerce, Stan Lowe, the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office of Information Security at the Veterans Affairs Department, Jeff Frederick, a Senior Systems Engineer at the NetIQ Corporation Federal Division, and Brent Kenniston, a Principal Solutions Architect at Triveer. Gentlemen, before break, we talked a lot about the derived credential. What is it? How does it apply to legacy applications potentially? We talked a little bit about mobility, and I promised I'd start with Tim on this because mobility is all about the census, it seems like, especially as you get closer and closer to the 2020. How does mobility fit in with this idea of derived credential? You guys talked about a pilot even, so talk a little bit more about the pilot and how it all fits together.
Yes, so we're looking at the fact that we have both at the decennial census in 2020, we'll have a large number of field enumerators working on a part-time basis, but we also have staff that are out collecting data every month on our regular surveys. Mission of the Census Bureau is to collect data and then provide those facts to the nation. So the first pilot that we've got going on is actually working with our field force using their computer-assisted personal interviews or their CAPI laptops. We're going to be running Windows 8, and we're actually starting to work on the pilot on using derived credentials on those devices. We're also looking at a pilot for enumerators for the 2020 as we test for that using derived credentials on smartphones and tablets. And then we're also looking at derived credentials for our workforce that uses VDI, both in the office and teleworking, so that we can get to one source of authentication instead of the current way where we use the RSA token as a way in.
So 3 separate pilots, very distinct pilots. I want to go back to the first one you mentioned, the CAP Labs. I love that name already. CAPI. Give me a sense of how does it work on a laptop versus, I've heard derived credential on mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, etc., but how is that on a laptop?
It would be basically the same. The tablets that we're looking at, the laptops that we're looking at, it would be basically the same. You would use the derived token, the software token, on your device instead of putting in taking your PIV card and putting it in the laptop.
And then just authenticates back to the back end.
It authenticates back to the back end and allows a secure connection back to our network.
And in many ways, this idea of derived credentials is coming at the perfect time for the census because, let's just call it what it is, you guys struggled with the handheld devices in the 2000 census and the 2010 census. You had discussions about that. This idea, this technology innovation, if you will, is coming at the perfect time. I mean, how much are you excited about the fact that the derived credential, has so much potential?
Well, I think we're very excited.
I can't tell.
From a security,
there you go.
Yeah, from a security perspective, I'm very excited.
Yeah.
From a mission and operational perspective, we are also very, very excited. We think it's going to be a way that's going to make it easier to train our enumerators. It's going to get them in the field with devices that they're familiar with. And it will provide a secure way for us to collect the data that we need to accomplish the mission.
Stan, let me turn to you. VA is also head down the path of some pilots, right. Newer pilots. Give me a sense of what they're doing and how they're using the derived credential.
So essentially, we started this back in March. There's not a whole lot of data coming out, but what the idea is we have a large number of people who like to access the system remotely, and not every one of them has government furnished equipment, or they don't take it home. So we have what we call a Census Access Gateway, which is a remote. So, and rather than sending those individuals home with those card readers that cost a lot of money, frankly, to plug into their laptop and then or their desktop at home to be able to access that, we're using a derived credential as a pilot to be able to see if that actually allows them to be able to use that. And it sounds like, from Census's experience, it sounded like that is actually going to work very well for us. But what we want to do is, the idea is, if it works well externally for remote access, taking the lessons learned and the information that we glean from that and applying it internally as well for a lot of the mobile devices to be able to hopefully help the physicians to be able to use those remote mobile devices more effectively in patient treatment.
Brent or Jeff, let me start with one of you guys. The idea of derived credential mobility, I mean, it seems like that is the nirvana many agencies have been waiting for, because these card readers are such a pain, because it just didn't work well. Brent, you're nodding your head, so I'll start with you. Give me a sense from a mobility standpoint, is the derived credential really where the whole industry is going?
You mentioned the sleeve before that we've tried for a few years. It's just not convenient. And mobility is all about convenience and usability. When we decrease the convenience of the device, we've just lost the point. So derived credentials, NIST has done us a big favor to really enable us to get more people doing compliant logical authentication on mobile than we've ever done before. A lot of those barriers, those legacy challenges to implementing ICAM in your agency, those have been overcome by this technological and policy advancement. We're really excited about it. It now is a way for us to provide much more business value, complete our agency mission with less effort.
Jeff, are you seeing from clients already saying, hey, how do we get on this derived credential bandwagon?
Absolutely. Our customers have been asking about mobile solutions for a number of years now, but they've, as Brent said, they've been very unwieldy for authentication purposes with a PIV card. So the mobile, the derived credential has basically been the enabling technology for mobile to now come to the forefront.
And we benefit from all the work that's been done up to this point. The work that Tim talked about, where we've enabled logical and physical access, the mobile credentials appear to the operating system on our CAPI devices as if it was a mounted physical smart card. So all of that work that we've done up to this point is now being leveraged again through this new layer.
We talk mobility, it's where everyone thinks going, but part of that is because of the cloud, the move to, if you will, VDI, we've talked about that a little bit, or even the idea of putting data centers and data in the cloud. Give me a sense, how does this all fit together? Because derived credential, smartphones, they have to access something. The network's probably in the cloud. Let me start with Brent.
We're seeing, in addition to cloud, a little bit of a private cloud within federal government, shared service providers like the GSA Managed Service Offering U.S. Access Program for our PIV card issuance. They've been a great partner to us to allow our ICAM components to integrate natively with them. So as we put a credential on a mobile device, the cloud system already is aware of that device and that credential and can trust that person and provide a customized experience for them because of that mobile credential. It's a full end-to-end system ability that we didn't have in the past.
Tim, let me turn to you for a sec when it comes to cloud, because I know from talking with your CIO, Brian McGrath, he was recently on my Ask the CIO show, and he mentioned about Census and the data center consolidation piece. You guys are pretty much ahead of the game compared to many other agencies. How are you guys integrating this idea of cloud and mobility, and then the derived credential on top of that? Because you're from a security standpoint, that falls back to you.
Mm-hmm. It does. I think that we are moving forward aggressively, but cautiously, if you can put the two words together. We have a strategy. We have a team working on our cloud transition. What can we do in the cloud? Cloud is going to become very important as we move towards the 2020 census. We currently have our mobile provisioning is in the cloud, our mobile device manager. We're testing a mobile application manager, which is a cloud service. We use Microsoft Office 365 for our email system, which is a cloud service. So we're looking a lot at what we can do in the cloud, and we're looking where it makes sense. We want to move to the cloud, but we want to move the right way. So we're looking at what does it mean for FedRAMP? How do we leverage that going forward?
When it comes to ICAM, though, and cloud and derived credential and then mobility, it seems to me, from a person who just kind of watches security from the sideline, it seems to layer the complexity. Is that a concern from you as the CISO?
I don't think so. I think that the federal space has changed. Security's changed. I think that in the federal government, we have to accept where technology is leading us, and we have to make the adjustments. It is more complex. From a CISO perspective, it takes a little bit more time to understand it. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the reasons that we bake in security engineering into the life cycle, so that we can make sure we're adding the right security on all the way through a project, whether that's internal project or a cloud project.
Stan, let me turn to you guys as well at VA. One thing that you guys are going on the path is you have several cloud instances. I think you were among the first to look at email in the cloud at one time. how does adding the derived credential piece, the identity management control to cloud to security, build me that stack?
Unlike a lot of federal chief information security officers, I actually think the cloud is a awesome idea because of the fact that if we implement it correctly, it lessens the complexity for us. Because then, for most, the Googles of the world, the Amazon Web Services, most of those people are, if not as secure, more secure than anything that we can provide internally. Because for us, it's a regulatory issue. Right. For Amazon and Google, it's a financial issue. So there's a vested financial interest for them to actually do this. Now, with derived credentials, I think as we slowly push things out to the cloud more and more and more, and from my perspective, I'm pushing for that a lot internally to the VA. As a matter of fact, as soon as I leave here, I'm going to a strategy lockdown for the VA's cloud strategy right after this. And this is one of the discussions that we're going to have today: is how do we push the VA more into the cloud than we already are, and not necessarily private clouds that the government is prone to do, because that's not really a cloud, that's just an external data center. How do we actually truly use a cloud and get across or overcome a lot of the regulatory issues that are facing us, the stuff from the IG, the GAOs, and they're adding the layer of bureaucracy on top of what should really be a simple decision for agencies to use to be able to better provide services for our citizens.
It's interesting you talk about not just move to a government cloud, but even look at the commercial side. If the CIA can go there, I think a lot of other agencies can make it work for them.
I make that point a lot.
Yeah.
Listen,
the CIA can get. Let me turn to Jeff. One thing about cloud and mobility, it seems to be partners in crime, if you will, in many ways. But then the derived credential makes this, again, complex, but better and more easy to kind of get your head around. What are you seeing from clients when it comes to these three things?
The move to the cloud even makes it more important to have robust identity and access management systems and reliable credentials, vetted and reliable credentials, because the agencies need to know who's accessing their systems. And for compliance reporting, et cetera, they need to understand who those people are. So the back-end identity and access management and credentialing systems are even more important with the move to the cloud.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because the roles and authentication piece had an interview with the Defense Intelligence Agency CIO, and she talked about really moving towards that back-end attribute exchange. Is that something that that IQ or Trivere is seeing from their customers, saying we want this, or this is a must-have now?
We actually utilize that for our Drive Credentials project, our pilot. We've connected with the GSA MSO US Access program programmatically as a cloud service for the purpose of transferring back-end attributes about those users into our Drive Credentials solution, so that when somebody's terminated in the cloud, they lose access to all of their derived credentials. When someone is transferred or changes roles in the cloud, their access reflects that locally.
And is this a private cloud, a public cloud, or a commercial cloud?
That happens to be a shared service offering.
From GSA?
From GSA.
But could you do it? Imagine you could do it if you partnered with XYZ cloud provider.
Absolutely, yes. And on top of that, in addition to agencies moving their stuff into the cloud, we're actually seeing the CIO's office becoming less of an operational maintenance for a production environment and more of an innovation center. We've been asked at Census to take this derived credentials solution that we've put together and actually work with our service providers, GSA, and move it off-prem and into the cloud. They're innovating and then pushing it up the stack. It's a neat model.
We're almost out of time. We'll ask the future of where identity access management control is going, derived credentials, cloud, mobility, all of it fits together. Let me start with Tim. From a Census perspective, what kind of advice, what should agencies think about? You guys seem actually to be ahead of a lot of other agencies. What are a few things they should keep in mind as they move down these paths?
I think first they should, and speaking from a security perspective, but in general, I think that don't take on more than you can do. It's a big, complex puzzle. Partner with the right people, figure out what your requirements are, and then get a game plan so that you can approach them in a reasonable manner and not try and solve everything the first day.
Don't eat the elephant in one bite. That's how I sum it up. Stan.
Requirements. Figure out what you want to do. I run into that so many times where, and the federal space is famous for that, is scope creep. Figure out what your requirements are. Small, manageable bites. VA is really good at that. and then decide what you want to do and engage your regulatory oversight bodies early and often, because they can put a huge hit in your giddy up later on.
Early and often. Jeff?
Include the identity and access management pieces in your project milestones for all your development and your internal IT projects.
All right. Hey, you're simple. I like that. Simple, straightforward, makes it easy. Brent, you get the last word.
ICAM becomes a facilitator, not a project itself. I'd like to say that I think we're going to see a move towards more wearable technology, a move towards, in ICAM, who you are, not necessarily what you have. I think we need to get away from the idea that a smart card is the answer. It's not. It's the ICAM pieces that has been talked about today. I believe that we'll see a shift towards remote identity proofing, remove the in-person requirement, and hopefully get to the point where the citizen can engage and transact securely with us within federal.
This comes from a man who's wearing an Apple Watch. We know with the remote where he's going. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests, Tim Rulin, the Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. Census Bureau in the Department of Commerce, Stan Lowe, the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office of Information Security at the Veterans Affairs Department, Jeff Frederick, a Senior Systems Engineer at NetIQ Corporation Federal Division, and Brent Keniston, a Principal Solutions Architect at Trivier. I'm your moderator, Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the panel discussion Connecting the Dots, Digital Authentication in Government, sponsored by NetIQ Attachmate and ProMark on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. For more information on this program, visit federalnewsradio.com and search NetIQ.
On behalf of NetIQ, Attachmate, ProMark, and Trivier, thank you for joining our discussion. We'll have the archive from this session available shortly, and a link will be sent to you to share with your colleagues. Those of you who requested training certificates will receive an email with download instructions immediately following the webinar. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you.